Begin today the Gemara at the bottom of Daf Lamed Tes Amud Beis, 2 lines from the bottom. Going back to what it said in the Mishnah regarding a person that's ma'anis a girl, so the Mishnah said he must marry this girl, even if it's something that he doesn't want. The Mishnah describes even if she's she's someone that is a chigeres, a suma, or mukashchin, whatever her condition is, he must marry her. Eines shaise ba'tzitzai. So the case of the ma'anis, he must continue drinking from this vessel. Amalei Rav mi Parzakia l'Rav Ashi. So Rav said to Rav Ashi, Mechti. Let's see, Migme Gamri Ma'adadi. We learn out, we compare, we find that we compare Einis and Mefate to one another. As Gemara brought before regarding the number of the money, the payment, and how you pay, the coins. So we learn them from each other. Laha Milse, so regarding this subject, regarding the fact that we forced this man to marry this girl, so why don't we learn them out from each other as well? That by a mefate, the halacha should be that we force him to marry this girl. And it said in the Mishnah, by a mefate, it's his choice. If he pays, he doesn't have to marry her. So the Gemara answers, Amakra, the pasuk said, Mar yimerena loy liisha. By the mefate, the Torah says, Mar yimerena loy liisha, that he should marry her. So the extra word loy tells me loy midaitai, that it's only if it fits with his consent. If he decides he wants to marry her, then he marries her. But if he wants to pay instead, then he pays. So this is a pasuk that it says specifically over here, and not by a einis, so therefore we know that in this detail, they're not the same. So then it said in the Mishnah, how is it that he has to be forced to marry her? The Mishnah concludes and says that if it's a situation where he's not allowed to marry her, because there's a lav to marry her, so then he can't marry her. So let's say the case is she's a mamzeres, so he can't marry her. So then the Mishnah says he doesn't marry her. Rav Kahana said about this, I said this idea, this halacha, in front of Rav Zvid from Nerda, and I asked him the following question. Neisi esse, v'nitche lois esse. Let the mitzvah say that it says over here, v'loi siya leisha, that he should marry her, and let that push away the lois esse, which is, let's say, the lois esse of mamzeres, and let him go ahead and marry her. This is always the rule that a esse is deicha lois esse. So why do we not apply that over here? So Tosfos over here says that it's very difficult to understand the Gemara's question, because if you look in the Mishnah brought a pasuk, v'loi siya leisha, isha re'uya. So if we're learning it from a pasuk, so the pasuk is clearly saying that over here we don't apply esa deicha lois esse. There's a few terutzim in Tosfos. The first teretz of Tosfos is when the Mishnah brings the pasuk v'loi siya leisha, that's not really the source of this, because really there's no mashmos in the words of the pasuk to say that even in a case of v'loi esse you can't marry her. It just says v'loi siya leisha, but there's no real drasha that you have in that pasuk. The Mishnah is bringing that pasuk after we'll have the explanation here in the Gemara why essa is not deicha lois esse, but it's not really a real limud from that pasuk. So the Gemara explains why this case is different. So Amali, so Rav Zvid, so he answered to Rav Kahana, Heicha amrinan, when do I say neisi esse v'nitchi lois esse, that an esse comes and pushes off the lois esse, kagoin mila b'tzaras. For example, in a situation when you have a bris mila, and in the place of the bris, the person has a nega tzaras, and the halacha is, or there's a lois esse that you're not allowed to cut off a nega tzaras. But over here he has a mitzvah saseh to fulfill the mitzvah of bris. So what's the halacha over there? That the essa of the bris pushes off the lois essa of not cutting off the tzaras. And the reason why we say that is the loy efsher l'kiyume la'aseh. There's no other way to fulfill the essa unless you're going to cut off the tzaras. So over there we say essa deicha lois essa. But over here, when it comes to this essa, that this man has to marry this woman, and there's a lois essa that she's a mamzeres, if she's going to come and say that I'm not interested in marrying him, is there any essa for him to marry her? If she doesn't want, he doesn't go ahead and marry her. So therefore Rashi says, what the Gemara is saying is, over here, what we do is, in such a case where she's a mamzeres, we teach her to say that I don't want to marry him, so that there would be no essa here, and then it's not going to be deicha de lois essa. So according to the way most Mefarshim explain, what Rashi is saying is, when you have a situation of a essa and a lois essa, and there's no choice here, there's no option, there's no other option in this matter, then I say essa is deicha lois essa. But if there's another option, or the way the Gemara puts it in other places is, if it's a situation where you could be mekayim both the essa and the lois essa, then the essa is not going to push off the lois essa. Or over here, it's a bit different. Over here, when it's not a must that you're going to have this essa, you could do it in a oifen that there won't be any essa. By teaching her not to want to marry him, so then there's no essa b'chlal. So there's no reason to allow this essa to push off the lois essa. Right. That's Rashi's pshat.
If she's a mamzeret, you would want to teach her to do that, get married with this guy, because she's not going to be able to get married to anybody else after this.
Okay.
She's a mamzeret.
Okay, but it's true, but it's a lav though. It's a lav, so we don't want it to be over this lav. It's a lav. There's another pshat here though that Tosfos says, that other Rishonim say, that the Gemara is not saying here that this is a situation where you don't have to push off the essa. The fact is, if she decides that she wants to marry him, and we try to convince her not to, and she says, no, I want to marry him, so then there is a essa. So what are you going to do then? So therefore Tosfos says what the Gemara is saying is something else. The very fact that this is a kind of essa, that it's possible that it doesn't apply, shows that this is a lighter essa. It's not such a stringent essa. When do I say essa deichel lois essa? When it's a essa which is chomer, because there's no way out. You must make a bris. Mashenkin, the essa over here, which is a kind of an essa that you could pati yourself from this essa, so it's not such a strong essa, and therefore it's not deichel lois essa. That's Tosfos' pshat. Another interesting detail here that Tosfos points out here, which is a long Indian, but just one vart, that when the Gemara brings this example of mila b'tzaras, Tosfos says it's just an example because really over there it's different than a regular case of essa deichel lois essa. Because really cutting off a tzaras is not only a lois essa, it's actually an essa as well. And the mila, which is deichel tzaras, is for a different reason, not because of essa deichel lois essa, but because the Gemara says that by mila we find that the Torah wrote the expression of bris 13 times, and therefore it's such a powerful mitzvah, so it pushes off the tzaras. So it's a different inyan. It's not really exactly the same thing of essa deichel lois essa. Tosfos says that we learned already in Yavamis, what's the real source of essa deichel lois essa? Tzitzis, kalayim b'tzitzis. And over there, when a person is wearing a garment which is made from pishtan, made from flax, from linen, and he wants to put the tcheles onto the tzitzis, and that tcheles has to be tzemer, over there, that's the situation of essa deichel lois essa, where one pushes off the other. That's the real example. Mm-hmm. Zok Teilige Mishnah Yisaima. Yisaima, that someone was me'aneser or mefater her, or see, as Rashi here brings, that from the Gemara we see that when it says shenis arsav and garsha, it's a separate case. Or a situation of a girl that was already married, Edison, the first stage of marriage, and then she got divorced, and now someone went and had a relation with her. So there's a knas to be paid over here. So what's the halacha? Rabbi Elazar said about this, ha'oines chayiv. So in a case of an oines, so this man has to pay the knas. V'hamefate potter. But in a case of a mefate, that he persuaded her, so then he's going to be potter of paying this knas. So what's the pshat of this? What's the difference between an oines and a mefate regarding this yisaima, or this girl that was nisarsa and nisgarsha? So the Gemara will explain that this is based on Rabbi Akiva's opinion that we had before. Let's see. On Daf Mem. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Baba Chana, Amar Rabbi Yechanan, Rabbi Lazar, B'shittas, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yamra. Rabbi Lazar said the halacha here of this Mishnah, this distinction of Einis and Mefate, based on the opinion of his teacher Rabbi Akiva. The Amar, Rabbi Akiva said, we learned it in the Mishnah before, that Yesh Lo Knas, that this girl that was Nisarsav and Nisgarsha, she was married and got divorced, so she does get Knas, but the Knas Alatzma, the Knas goes to her. So because the Knas goes to her, that's why there's a distinction between Einis and Mefate. By a Einis, which is against her will, so therefore she can collect the Knas. But by a Mefate, because she was persuaded and she agreed, she's Meichel on that Knas, so she can't collect the Knas. Mimai, how do I know that this is Rabbi Akiva's opinion? Midiktani Yisaima says there in the Mishnah regarding this Yisaima that Rabbi Elazar Aimer ha'aynis chayev, that in the case of an aynis, so you pay the knas to the Yisaima. The money's going to her, so she gets it. But in the case of a mefata, she was persuaded, potter, so he doesn't have to pay it, or she was meichel. So now on this you could ask the question, Yisaima, if the case is a Yisaima, there's no father here, and she's getting the knas, it's shita. This should be obvious. If she's the one getting it, so obviously in the case of a mefata, so she totally agreed, so why should she get the knas? Ella, rather, ha-kamashmalam, so this is the chiddush of Rabbi Elazar. The main chiddush of Rabbi Elazar was regarding this arsav and his garsha, based on what his teacher Rabbi Akiva said. The naidash and his arsav and his garsha, that a girl that was nisarsa, the first stage of marriage, and then she got divorced. Ki yisaima, that we compare her to a yisaima. Ma yisaima, just like by a yisaima la'atzma, the knas she gets goes to herself. Af naidash and his arshav and his garsha, so to a naida that was married and was divorced la'atzma. She's the one that gets the knas, and therefore, in a case that she was persuaded, she doesn't get any knas. So Rabbi Elazar said this based on what Rabbi Akiva said. Amar Rab Zera, Amar Rabbi Bar Shila, Amar Rav Amnun Saba. Amar Ravada Barahava, in the name of Ravada Barahava. Amar Rav, in the name of Rav. Halacha Rabbi Lazar. The halacha here is like Rabbi Lazar. And Kari Rav Alei, the Rabbi Lazar, Rav said regarding what Rabbi Lazar said here, Tuvina the Hakimi, that Rabbi Lazar is from the fortunate ones amongst the Chachamim. The fact that he learned from his Rebbe Rabbi Akiva and he said a halacha based on what his Rebbe Rabbi Akiva taught him, so he's very fortunate. Right? And as the Rishonim point out, even though Rabbi Akiva is the one that said this, so Rabbi Akiva is really the one that should be fortunate that he said this halacha. But the fact that we had before, if you remember, that there was various opinions regarding what Rabbi Akiva really said. There was what Rabbi Akiva said in the Mishnah, and Rabbi Akiva in the Braisa was quoted differently. Rabbi Akiva in the Braisa said that even by a girl that's Nisarsav and Nisgarsha, the father still gets the Knas. The fact that Rabbi Lazar got the accurate opinion of his Rebbe, that she gets it, and therefore if she's a Mefutah, she doesn't get it, that's why he was saying, Rav was saying on Rabbi Lazar how fortunate he was that he learned right from his Rebbe Rabbi Akiva. As we said before, besides the Knas you pay, one of the other payments is that he has to pay for humiliating her. So what is this baishas that you pay? You have to estimate this by seeing who is the one that embarrassed her and who is the girl that got embarrassed. You can't compare every case the same. The humiliation is different. So it's interesting regarding how you estimate this. Rashi has a very interesting pshat. Rashi says that if it's just an average person that came and had this relation with her, that's the biggest embarrassment. And Rashi says, if it would be some very low person that did this to her, it's not such a great embarrassment. Because it's a low person, and therefore people think, Nebuch, she fell into this. But if it's an average person that did this to her, it's a bigger embarrassment. And Rashi actually says another thing. If it's an Adam Choshev, if it's a distinguished person that came and did this to her, it's also not such a great embarrassment. The biggest embarrassment is an Adam Beinani. That's Rashi's pshat. But the other Rishonim say, and Halach and Shulchan Aruch, it actually says differently, that if it's a low person that did this to her, her embarrassment is actually even greater. Okay. Pegam. When it comes to this, that he has to pay for the pegam, that her value went down. How do you estimate that? We see her as if she would be a maid being sold. They should be sold as a maid. How much would her value be before this happened? How much her value is now? The Gemara will explain this more, exactly what kind of a value, why should her value change just because of this incident that happened to her. Knas, what's the knas that you pay? Shava b'chol adam, that's equal for everybody. Anytime we find the Torah gives a certain set payment that you pay, shava b'chol adam. So that's going to be equal for everybody. Frag the Gemara. Again? Regarding the shivcha. The Gemara will explain. The Gemara will explain that. Frag the Gemara, how do we b'chlal know that besides the knas you have to pay, which is 50 coins, there's in addition the baishes and the pagam? How do we know this? Maybe when the Torah says you pay the 50 coins, that already covers everything. Rab Zayda said you can't say there's one equal payment of 50 coins that covers everything. Because then Yaimiru, people will say, Baal Bas Malachim. If you went and had a relation with this princess, a Bas Malachim, Chamishim, you pay this amount of Chamishim, and Baal Basat Yaitis, and if you just has having a relation with this average girl, so Chamishim, he pays the same amount, the payment of 50, it doesn't make sense it should be the same payment. So we must say that payment of 50 is besides the other payment of Baishas and Pegam. Amalei Abaye, so Abaye says, no, you can't, how could you say that this is the reason? Ihachi, if so, Gabe Evet Nami. By a slave. The halach of a slave Rashi here brings is a pasuk that speaks about a slave that if an ox gores a slave, so then you have to pay the master 30 coins. And over there as well, the Torah gives a set amount of 30 coins. And it doesn't matter what kind of a servant, what kind of slave this is. So Yochi Gabi Eved Nami. So by a slave as well that got gored from this ox. So say the same thing. Yaimiru, people are going to say Eved, Neikev Margolius, Shloshim. Eved, that's such a great servant that he's so talented that he can string pearls. So he gets 30 coins, his master. And Eved Eisa Maisa Machat. And if you have a slave that's just a tailor, does simple work, Shloshim, his master also gets paid 30 for this. Why is it the same payment? Mm-hmm. But nevertheless, that's what the Torah says, that it's the same payment of 30. Yeah. So over there you don't have that question. So therefore Rab Zayda says, let's try to prove this a little bit differently. Elam Rab Zayda, ilu ba lea shnayim. If two people had a relation with this girl here, echad kedarka, one in the ordinary way, ve'echad shaloi kedarka, and one in not the ordinary way. So yaimru, people are going to say, Baal shleima chamishim, that if you had a relation with this girl, which is a shleima, meaning this is a girl that nobody ever had a relation with her before, so she gets a payment of 50. Baal peguma chamishim, and if she already had a relation with someone else, but she's still a basula because she had a relation with someone else, shaloi kedarka, and you're going to say that she still gets the same payment of 50? How could you say that if the person, the girl, her body is not the same, she's not the same person, how could you say that they both get the same payment of 50? So there has to be different levels of payment, and therefore where's the difference? In the baishas and the pagam. That's where the difference should be. But again, Abaye asks in this, Amalei Abaye, if so, you should say the same thing, Gabe Eved Nami, regarding an Eved, that an ox gored this Eved, and there the Torah gives the same payment. Yoimru Eved Bari, so people will say that if this is a strong slave, Shloishim, he gets paid 30. Eved Muke Shchin, one Eved which has boils all over his body, and he's not so strong, Shloishim, gets the same payment of 30. So over here as well, this distinction Rab Zeta wanted to make is look at the quality of the body of the person, but we see even regarding an Eved, that even this point, to look at what the condition of the body of the person does not matter. It's the same payment. So how do we know over here that in addition to the 50 coins, you have to pay Boishas and Pagam? Elo Amar Abaye, so therefore Abaye says, we see it in the Pasuk. Makra, we had this before already. Pasuk says, Tachas Ashe'ino, that the knas you pay is because of the pain that he caused her. So what this means is, Hani Tachas Ashe'ino. This payment here is for the pain you caused her. But Miklal Dike Boishas and Pagam. But from this you see that besides this is also the payment of Boishas and Pagam. And that's a different thing, the humiliation and her value. Rava says also that you see it from the Pasuk, Makra, the Pasuk said, man that lay with her has to pay 50 coins. What do you see here? Why does the Torah add these words? Hanoas shchive nun. The pleasure he had of laying with her, for that he pays 50. But besides this, there's also what he has to pay for humiliating her and bringing down her value. So therefore, we see that it's a separate payment. But now the Gemara addresses another fundamental thing that we kept on learning about here in the Gemara is who gets the payment if the father is still alive, or if she's still a naira, the father gets the payment. How do we know this? Maybe I should say that she's the one that gets this knas. How do we know? It goes to the father. So the Gemara answers, Makra, the Torah says, Binurea beisavia. When she's a naira, in this age from 12 to 12 and a half, she's in the father's home. This is actually a pasuk that's written regarding a faras nedarim. A girl that makes a neder, makes a vow, the father could annul any vows she makes. So the Gemara here is saying that we learn from that pasuk, just like regarding a vow, she's in her father's possession, so too regarding any money, any income, including this knas here, it goes to the father. Kol shvach neurim la'avia. Anything that she gains or income she gets goes to the father. From here we learn that this includes the knas as well. But the Gemara asks on this, could this be a source? But ve'elo, hodam Rav Huna Marav. Rav Huna said in the name of Rav, minayin shemaisa habaslavia. From where do I know that a girl that's in the age of a naira, 12 years old, and she works and she has income, that it goes to the father? So the Gemara says the answer is, Rav said, shenema, because the pasuk says, v'chiyim kerish is bitil that a father could sell his daughter as a maid. So ma'oma, he sells her as a maid. What happens then? My siyadel lerabba. So all her work is for her master. So avbas my siyadel lavia. So too over here regarding this girl that the father could sell her. So whatever income she makes from working goes to the father. So Rav learned it out not from the pasuk that we quoted before, benurea beisavia, that it says by a neder. He learns it out from a different pasuk, from this that we see that the father could sell his daughter. So the question is, lamali, why did Rav have to bring the source from that pasuk that the father could sell the daughter? Why doesn't he learn it out from this that it says that a naira is in the father's possession and therefore he gets her income? Elo, the answer is, why did Rav not learn out from there? That pasuk is telling me the halacha that the girl, the naira, is in the father's possession specifically regarding a neder. Not regarding everything, not regarding income, not regarding money. It's only regarding the fact that he could annul her vows. And and if you'll argue and say, okay, so once we see the Torah says that she's in the father's possession for the vows, so let's learn from there for other things as well, regarding money as well, that the income goes to the father. But we can't learn from there. Why not? We have the following rule. We can't learn out any halacha regarding a money matter from something the Torah tells us regarding an isser, regarding over here the prohibition, this that when she makes a neder, that the neder takes effect and that the father could annul the vow. You can't compare moment to isser. So how can you learn from there? And now if you'll argue and say that let's learn out that the father gets her income from this that we see that the father gets the knas that a man has to pay for her. So we should learn from knas. For this we also have a rule, we never could compare a payment of money or income of money to a payment of knas. Mamain and knas, a penalty, is a unique thing that you pay. The money cannot be compared to that, so you can't learn from there. So therefore the Gemara's question now is, how could we say that we learn from the pasuk of Benurea Beis Avia, which it says where? By Hafaras Nedarim, that from there we see that the knas goes to the father. Hafaras Nedarim is a situation of Isser, and we're saying that she's in the father's possession specifically for the Isser of the vows. So how do we know that that applies to the payment of money or of knas when this man has to pay the knas? Answers the Gemara, Elo, you're right, we have to say that there's a different source. Mistavra the Avia Havet. It's logical that when this man has to pay the knas, this knas goes to the father. Why? Because the Ibai Masala Lemenuvalam Wakishchen. A father is allowed to marry his daughter off to whoever he wants. This is going to be a Mishnah in the next Perek regarding the rights a father has to marry off his daughter. And he can marry off his daughter to whomever he wants, even if this person is a disgusting individual, and even if he's a person with boils all over his body, a father can marry her off to whoever he wants. What does that show you? The father has the rights to embarrass her, to humiliate her, to degrade her value by marrying her off to this person. So therefore, that shows you that the father has the control over her humiliation or her value. And therefore, any payment that comes for this Baishis and Pagam, goes to the father as well. Okay, so let me just clarify something that I don't think I said clearly before. When I said the Gemara here, the whole discussion of the Gemara regarding the payment that we're discussing here is not regarding Knas. The fact that the father gets the knas, that it actually says clearly in the pasuk. V'nasana ish la'avia naira. You don't need any source for that. The whole discussion of the Gemara here is regarding baishas and pagam. How do we know that the baishas and pagam goes to the father? And here the Gemara is saying because by the very fact that the father has a right to marry his daughter off to whoever he wants, that is the proof that he has control over this matter. That this is his, and therefore he gets this payment as well.
Why don't you learn it from Chim?
So you see the beneged to income, just like over there, the income goes to the master, goes to the father, but beneged to baishus and pagam, not necessarily. Okay, the Gemara goes back.
Why the father can do whatever he wants?
So that shows he has control over this inyan. This, if he has the ability to humiliate her, so anyone else that comes and humiliates her, you took away from something that's in my possession, that's in the father's possession, that he could come and humiliate her. It's a very interesting source. Okay, there's a few ways how to learn it in the Rishainim here, Taisvis. Okay, Zok the Gemara weiter, Pagam, where am I over here? Pagam, that is, Raya Noisa Ki'ilu Hi Shifchanim Keres. How do you evaluate this Pagam, that her value went down? So you have to see what her value is if she's being sold as a maid. So the Gemara says, how do we evaluate this? Amar Avu the Shmuel, the father of Shmuel said, Oimdin, what we evaluate is, Kama Adam Reitze Litem bein shivcha besula le shivcha beula. How much is a person ready to pay to buy a maid, which is a besula or a beula? She was already had a relation with someone else before. L'shamshay, to serve him. So the Gemara asks him this: shivcha beula l'shamshay. If he's using this maid to serve him, so it makes a difference. My nafkalamina. What difference does it make if she once had a relation with someone before or not? She's going to work for him. She's just a maid servant in the home. How are you going to use this as an evaluation to see how her value went down? Ella says the Gemara, ben shivcha be'ula l'shivcha she'ena be'ula. We're evaluating a person that wants to buy this maid, and she once had a relation with someone else before, or a shivcha that did not have a relation with someone before. La siya la'avdai. He wants to marry off. He wants that this maid he's buying her only to marry her off to a slave that he owns. Not la'avdai my nafkalei mina. Why does it matter to the master who exactly his slave is going to be married to? Like whether a shivcha that had a relation with someone before or not.
He can have relations with her and then she becomes his wife.
Okay, so the Gemara answers, we're talking here about a shivcha kananis and an evet kanani. So the Gemara answers, be'evet sheyesh le'rabbi koiris ruach imenu. Talking about the slave that the master is very, very happy with his work, and he wants to give him something as a gift for what he's doing for him. He wants to show him appreciation. So therefore he's going to buy him a nice wife, a good wife, to show him appreciation. So for this, there's a difference that he's looking for a good wife for this slave that he's very happy with. So there'll be a difference in the value of this maid that he's buying that once had a relation with someone else before or not. That's the way you evaluate this. This is going back to something we learned all the way at the beginning of this Perek. Kol makim sheyesh mecher. Anytime the age of this girl is that the father could sell her as a maid, ein knas. So in that time period, there is no payment of knas. What does this refer to? A ketana. A father could sell his daughter when she's still a ketana as a maid. But then at the age of a ketana, there's no payment of knas. V'chol makim sheyesh knas. In the age when there is knas, which is a naira, from the age of 12, ein mecher. So then the father can't sell her anymore. As the Mishnah says, Ketana yesh lo mecha ve'en lo knas. When she's a ketana, the father could sell her and there's no knas. Naira yesh lo knas ve'en lo mecha. Naira, there is knas, but the father cannot sell her anymore. Now, habegeres, a girl that's even more mature, from the age of 12 and a half and older, ein lo lo mecha ve'lo knas. The father cannot sell her, and there's no payment of knas for this age. Amar Rav Yudah Amar Rav Zu Divrei Rab Meir. This Mishnah here is the opinion of Rab Meir. Ava Chachamim Oimrim. The Chachamim say Yesh la knas b'mokim mecher. Even when she's a ketana, there is a payment of knas in that age when the father could sell her. The Tanya, as we learned in the Braisa, ketana mibas yoimechad v'achatavi shtei seiris. A girl that's just from one day old until the age of when she brings 2 years to show that she's already a naira. Yesh lo mecher ve'ein la knas. In that age, the father could sell her as a maid, but there's no knas here. Mishatavi shtei seiris achet hibager. From when there are 2 years until she's a begeres, and that half a year. Yesh la knas. That's when there is knas ve'ein la mecher, and the father cannot sell her. Divrei Rab Meir. This is Rab Meir's opinion. Shahaya Rab Meir Aimer. Rab Meir used to say, in the time period that a father could sell her, there is no knas. And in the time period when there's knas, the father cannot sell her. However, Chachamim disagree with this. The Chachamim say, Ketana mibas gimel shana v'yoyim echad, a ketana from the age of 3 years old and 1 day, until she becomes a bigeres, 12 and a half, yesh la knas. There is knas. So there is payment of knas even for a ketana. Knas, so the Gemara asks on this expression that Chachamim here say, that she has knas. Does that mean knas in mecher loy? Does that mean that there's only a payment of knas, but the father can't sell her? Amen. So no, what Chachamim meant to say, af knas b'mokim mecher. The chiddush of the Chachamim was that of course a father could sell her. That says clearly in the Torah that a father could sell his daughter when she's a ketana. But in addition, this is also a time when there would be a payment of knas according to the Chachamim. So here, that's the argument we have here between Rab Meir and the Chachamim. A ketana, is there a payment of knas for a ketana? So here the Gemara is going to bring the source for this machlekes. Amar Rav Chiste, my time with Rab Meir. What's the source for what Rab Meir said? Amar Kra, because the Torah says v'lo yisiya liisha, that he has to marry this girl. What does this mean? B'mahava atzma kosim medaber, because it says v'lo yisiya. Siya means that she could marry herself off. So we're talking only about a naira that marries herself off. When she's a ketana, she can't marry herself off. Only the father can marry her. So over here in this pasuk we see, we're talking only about a ketana, a naira that she can marry herself off. And then what's Rabbanan's opinion? That even a ketana that's knas, Amar Reish Lakish says, Amar Kra, the Torah said, naira afil ketana. It says in the Torah naira, this word naira is written in the Torah without that hey. Even though it's read as naira, but it's written as nar, without a hey. So therefore, because it's written without the hey, afil ketana b'mashma. The Torah wants you to understand that this payment of knas is even for a ketana. Shama Rav Papa bereid Rav Chanan mi be Kluchis. Rav Papa, son of Rav Chanan from Kluchis, heard this that was said in the name of Reish Lakish. Azal Amra Kamed Rav Shimi Barashi. And he repeated this drasha that was said, that Reish Lakish said, and Amalei and Rav Shimi Barashi said to him, Aton ahamas nitula. You learned this that Reish Lakish said over here on this machlokes here between Rab Meir and the Rabbanon. But I learned this drasha of Reish Lakish on something else. And I learned it as follows. Omer Reish Lakish, that Reish Lakish said, Hamaitzi shemra ala katana. A person that lets out a bad rumor regarding his wife, which is a katana. And that means he marries her and he says, I found that she's not a basula, and that after the edus and after there was the first stage of marriage, she must have had a relation with someone else. He lets out this bad rumor. That's what he's claiming happened here. So what happens? Potter. And then if it turns out to be that what he said is a lie, so then over there the pasuk says that he has to pay a knas for what he did, for letting out this bad rumor. So over there, on this, Reish Lakish says that if his wife was a katana, he'll be potter to pay. How do we know? Shenema, the pasuk says, v'nosnu la'avi naira. You have to pay to the father of the naira. And over here, naira male dibra kasav. Over here, the Torah actually does say the word naira written out fully with the hey at the end of the word. So because it says naira full, not like by what it says by the parsha of the Einis and Mefate, there it says naira without the hey. Here it says it with a hey, so the Torah is telling me that it has to be only a naira, and then you pay for this Maitzi Shamra, for letting out this bad rumor. Ravada Barava asked on this drasha, the way it was quoted in the name of Rish Lakish, why do we even need this drasha? Time with the Kosav Rachman and Naira. The only reason we know that we're speaking about a Naira and not a Katana is because it says it full, the word Naira. Halavachi. But if not so, Hava Mina Afili Katana. Then I would think that even for a Katana, there is this payment over here for letting out this rumor. But Vaksiv, what does it say there in that parsha? The Torah continues and says, if it turns out to be true what the husband said, that she had a relation with someone else after the Edison. So then what do? The Lenimtsu Bsulum Lenaira, that she was not a Basula. She was Mizana after she got married. So then Vaitzius Hanaira al Pesach Beis Avia, they take out this girl to the door of her father's house, Skalua, and they have to stone her to death. So what do we see over here? That we're not speaking about a katana, we must be speaking about a naira. Or katana lav basayin shini. A katana, there's no such punishment for. So we know that it's speaking about a naira. Why do we need this drasha of hanaira that Reish Lakish said? Hello, so therefore the Gemara says, you're right. Over here, what Rish Lakish darshan is as follows. Kan naira. The reason why the Torah is writing the word naira full with a hey is to let you know that it's only here that it's a naira, that we're speaking about a girl that's already a naira, not a katana. Any other time when the Torah writes naira without that hey in the end, so it's only spelled with nar without the hey, afile katana b'mashma. That includes even a katana, and that's the source of the Rabbanan's opinion that by the Einis and the Mefate, you have to pay the knas even for a katana, because there it says nar without that hey, not like Maitzi Shamra when it says it with a hey.